guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I know I disappeared off the face of the internet for like a week and a half, but I am back. I had some understaffing moments at my bar, so I basically was there covering, which is a lot. I'm actually going to be doing a whole video on what it's been like opening my bar and kind of why this channel has been getting less than 3 videos a week. Nothing bad at all. It's just like opening a bar has always kind of been my dream, and now I'm doing it and it's awesome. And unfortunately, sometimes when things go awry over there, it does have to take priority over everything else. But I'm actually going to do a whole video on it because the bar is actually loosely inspired by a horror novel, which is so freaking cool. So stay on the lookout for that. I'm going to reveal the name of the bar and all of that fun stuff, and kind of like just a story time about opening it and where the inspiration came from and what book it's inspired by really soon. But before I do that, I want to actually talk about books. And we're going to talk about When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I did just get this in my most recent Nightworms package. This was on my most anticipated reads of 2025 list, so I'm really stoked to talk about this, especially because I have a lot of really interesting thoughts on Nat Cassidy as a writer as a whole. So the only other thing I have read by Cassidy is Nestlings, which came out like a year and a half ago. And I have a love-hate relationship with that novel because I don't actually think I liked the novel as a whole, but I do really like Nat Cassidy's prose, and I really liked the setting that he created in that story. I think creating a kind of luxury building in New York and turning it kind of into its own character was really cool and intriguing. That novel pays a lot of tribute to Rosemary's Baby, which is an amazing classic horror read. And it kept me intrigued in what Nat Cassidy does. I'm definitely going to pick up his big debut release, Mary, eventually, but this just came out, and it's a spin on like a dark fairy tale, so we're going to talk about it. I'm going to read the back of the book. One night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. As they attempt to evade the boy's increasingly desperate father, horrifying incidents of butchery follow them. At first, Jess thinks she understands what they're up against, but she's about to learn that there's more to these surreal and grisly events than she could have ever imagined, and that when the wolf finally comes home, no one will be spared. So yes, this is very much a fairy tale, as Nat Cassidy says from the very beginning. It's not a happy read. It's not a happy read at all. I would check the trigger warnings on this book. I really would, but I maybe wouldn't read the trigger warnings listed in the front of the novel. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, especially because Nat Cassidy kind of goes on this whole rant about putting the content warnings in the book, and how like people got annoyed with him for putting content warnings in a previous book, and how he's just kind of like, hey, read them if you want, read them to know what's going in. But I will say the content warning in this particular book is kind of a spoiler. It's kind of a spoiler, and having read it, just because I have no problem reading about content warnings, I like knowing when things are gonna, you know, come out of left field and maybe be really upsetting and disturbing to me, but I just kind of wish he had veiled what he was talking about a little better, because it ruined the ending for me, and it ruined the twist for me. And that was a big bummer. It was a big bummer because I remember like reading the content warning and being like, okay, I know this is going to happen. And then I got like 95% of the way through the novel and I was like, oh, wow, I know exactly what's going to happen. And that sucked. So just be warned about that. Let's talk about this book. I don't particularly like the characters that Nat Cassidy creates. That was my biggest issue with Nestlings, is I have trouble sympathizing with our leads, and in this novel as well. I liked these characters a lot more. I found our main character, Kiddo, the unnamed boy, throughout the novel, to be really interesting. I thought it was a cool way to do a very realistic child, but to do so in a way that wasn't necessarily irritating or annoying, but got across to our other main character, Jess, that sometimes kids aren't all sugar and rainbows. I think he had a very nice balance of that. I just didn't find Jess to be that compelling of a character. This story is all about having... This story is all about grief. I feel like a lot of Nat Cassidy's stories are about handling grief, and also the difficulties of parenthood. So very similar tone and theme to what happens in Nestlings, yet done in a very, very different style. And this book is all about daddy issues. And like the kind of broad spectrum that people can have when they have strained relationships with their fathers. And you see it time and time and time and time and time again with our main characters in this story. And it's also a reflection of Nat Cassidy's own personal experiences. I think that metaphor for this particular fairy tale was done very, very, very well. However, when I say fairy tale, I don't mean Disney, Cinderella, happy ending. This is very much more a Brothers Grimm style fairy tale where the ending is grim. It is bleak. It is not happy. It is very dark. For the most part, except for the very, 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 very end, where we kind of have this twist, which is whatever, cool. Didn't think it was necessary. It definitely adds another layer of bleakness to the overall story, but by introducing the twist ending at the very, very final moment of this book, it also does something that I hate, which is not answer the final story and final conclusion that happens to our main character. It means that our ending is extremely open-ending for a large pivotal plot point of this particular story, and I did not like that. I think if you're going to make a subplot as Jess's subplot, so nothing to do with like Kiddo or the relationship with fathers or anything, but Jess's subplot that kind of launches this whole story into motion, does not have a satisfying conclusion. We do not get answers. I think that might kind of be the point that Nat Cassidy was making, but it left me very unsatisfied, the conclusion of the story. And that kind of sucked. And that's kind of sort of what happened with Nestlings, too. Like, there was this kind of open-ended bleakness to the finality of Nestlings that I just kind of was like, huh. Don't think I'm happy with how that came together at the end. But this one, it did so a little bit more unsatisfyingly? Is that a word? Yeah. This story is also not a werewolf story. I was really hoping it was going to be like a werewolf story. It's not. But if you're a fan of Stranger Things, especially like the first season of Stranger Things, you're probably really going to get on board with what this is about. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I really don't want to kind of spoil a lot of this book. I do think that this book is very thin in what the plot is and very strong in what the metaphor is. Kind of similar to Josh Mallerman's Daphne. If you take the metaphor out of this story, it kind of loses a lot of the purpose that goes into it, and I think that's okay with this novel, because I did enjoy the prose, and I did enjoy reading it. I know I'm kind of like tearing it to shreds right now, but it did have like these like really intricate slice of life moments with all of our main characters, including our like kind of supporting cast. So our FBI agent has a really strong slice of life narrative. Our main character, Jess's mom, Cookie, has an amazing slice of life narrative. We really get to see a richness in who all of these characters are, except for maybe Kiddo's dad, which I wish had more behind him, because I think that was kind of what this story was missing. And the same goes with Jess's father. There's so many moments of we don't know who our parents really are, especially our dads, and there's such a commentary on these like daddy issues, or I'm just gonna call it daddy issues because that's how it's consistently referred to in this novel. These kind of like unresolved relationships with our main character's parents. It's so ingrained into the story, and yet we still never get a glimpse into who those dads are. At the core of it. And yes, I do think that is the point, because we are reading primarily from our estranged characters' perspectives. But I think to round out the story as a whole, it would have been nice to kind of have the richness and backstory of those father figures and those fathers, to make the story make a little bit more sense and not just feel so one-sided. The story is a very, very simplistic structure of Jess and Kiddo trying to escape the clutches of the father of Kiddo, who is very wolf-like. and kind of just going on this journey to escape them. And that's it. And then the father catches up. Very, very simple formulaic story. A lot of really interesting and intriguing things happen throughout it. There's a lot of this playing upon a child's imagination and like what a child can believe is real and how that can both benefit and hurt a child, especially this like loss of innocence commentary. And I think that was done really, 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 really well. But I just think that a lot of dumb decisions happen on Jess's part. Again, this kind of commentary on like people who suddenly become parents who maybe don't want to be parents, and not knowing exactly how to operate, or just being a parent who operates in a kind of dysfunctional or non-traditional manner. This novel is packed with metaphors and commentary on that, so much so that it becomes more important than the plot. And I did like it for that. However, I just wish everything else kind of came together a bit more smoothly, and that there was just a little bit more for me to dissect from a story that is like 300 pages long, because I feel like a lot of it felt redundant or kind of droned on or spent too much time on certain side quests that didn't actually matter in the end. And I think this could have worked much better in a shorter format. So this was a 3-star read for me, because I did enjoy it. I know I'm being really harsh with it, and I know I'm really not really talking about any plot points, because to me, this book had nothing to do with the plot. It was all about the commentary of human relationships and familial relationships done in the style of a Brothers Grimm fairy tale, where a lot of fantastic things are happening, but they're happening in modern day, and we're playing upon modern science, and just making a lot of commentaries on the way the world operates and the media operates and the government operates. And so it's an interesting story. And if you're a fan of Nat Cassidy and if you're a fan of Nestlings, I do think you will like this. It didn't leave me like pondering the way that Nestlings did afterwards. I finished Nestlings and I was kind of like, I don't think I liked this book. And like the further I've removed myself from that story, the more I'm kind of like, you know what? I'm like so glad I read that novel. Like I really feel like I get what was going on with that novel and what Nat Cassidy was trying to do. This to me, I don't quite have that feeling, because again, this is all metaphors. It's not this intriguing literary spin on what is a character and these commentaries on society as like a whole and like the upper and lower class. Like it's not so in depth as I felt that Nestlings commentary was, and then the plot in Nestlings I felt was very strong for what it was. This to me again feels very formulaic, but done in a way that is really cool and interesting, and unfortunately predictable. Unfortunately very, very, very predictable, and if you read the content warning at the beginning, becomes doubly predictable. And kind of falls into these cliches. And these cliches, I feel, again, kind of go back to the fact that, like, it is a fairy tale. We can kind of assess this story, and if you know that it's going to be a very dark, grim story to tell a lesson, you can probably predict exactly what's going to happen. I just think I wanted more from this book. I wanted more, and at the same time, I wanted less. I wanted more development and conclusion with our main character Jess and her surrounding daddy issues, and same goes with Kiddo and with his father, and kind of the lore that is created around Kiddo and his father. Would have loved more of that, and instead we just kind of got a lot of these like just strange side quests that I just don't quite understand why they needed to be there, with a very bleak and predictable ending. But worth a read. For sure worth a read. 3 stars. Like, I'm really not disappointed in reading this at all. I did really breeze through this. Like, I'm being so harsh, and it doesn't deserve me being that harsh towards it. But definitely want to read more from Nat Cassidy. I think I'm going to pick up Mary, because at the end of this novel, definitely read The Afterword by Nat Cassidy. It really shines like a huge light on where he was when he wrote this book, and the same thing that he did with Nestlings. But he does say that, like, Mary, Nestlings, and When the Wolf Comes Home are all kind of a trilogy of sorts around, like, grief. And I think it's a really, really interesting way to look at how he processes grief, especially when you realize that each book is dedicated to a different family member that he lost. I think you can really see that in Nestlings, and I think you can really, really see that in When the Wolf Comes Home. And so I definitely think I need to read all 3 together and look at them as a trilogy of sorts, because there is definitely an interesting tonal shift that he has between Nestlings and When the Wolf Comes Home that makes sense in a way, but at the same time also kind of takes away from what I liked about Nestlings versus what I have issue with in this novel. I hope that makes sense. Definitely watch my review of Nestlings if you have not already. I don't think it has any spoilers in it. But yeah, this is definitely an author that is on my like one to watch list, and I'm going to keep reading from him for sure, because I think he's doing interesting things in unique ways and has something really valuable to say. I'm just not 100% sure if I enjoy how he's going about it thus far. I definitely think I liked Nestlings more than When the Wolf Comes Home, but I do think that after initially finishing each book that I had a more positive response to Wolf than I did to Nestlings. Nestlings has just really stuck with me, and I almost decluttered it at one point, and I can't bring myself to get rid of that book because I just think there's a lot of value and worth in that novel that I didn't get initially, and I'm kind of hoping that that is what's going to happen with this book, and it's going to kind of just hit me one day of like, oh, that's what I was missing about this novel, but we will see. So 3 stars for now. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. I am trying to get back to my normal posting schedule. I apologize for the radio silence for like a week and a half. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one.